Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Thursday edition of Video Clips. And I want to remind you that I put out other videos on Wednesdays and Fridays, which you're welcome to subscribe to. You can email me at pampopper@msn.com if you would like to be on the direct subscribe list, and we'll send you links to where to find those videos. And then, of course, I put out a newsletter on Monday. You can also be added to that list as well. A couple of quick announcements. Remember that the Food Over Medicine Boot Camp on March 13th is here in Columbus, Ohio. Well, I'm in Worthington, but in the greater Columbus area, where if you're in driving distance, you might want to come and join us. It includes lunch from 10 to 3, and I think you'll enjoy it. And then if you do not live in Columbus, you can watch it remotely on Zoom. And so let us know if you'd like to do that. There's a member and non-member price. This weekend is the Communication and Problem Solving Boot Camp, Friday night, Saturday morning. There's still time to register for that. And then at the end of the month, the HIV/AIDS course, which I've been working a lot on. And of course, it's going to be interesting to people who are in the risk group or who have AIDS. But also, I think you will find this very interesting in terms of history of epidemiology in the United States and some the history of viruses and that sort of thing. So you might be interested in taking that course, and it's free. It's a $695 course, but it's free if you buy $1,000 worth of something, tuition, or it can be product, it can be a combination of things between now and when that course is offered the last weekend in March. So those are things coming up that might be interesting to you. So I'll tell you what I want to talk about now, and I think this is really interesting. I've said for a long time that while we are experiencing some very difficult times right now, I really do think better things are coming as we forge a different model of what were broken systems that needed repair. One of them is education. The other is healthcare. I'll stick with discussing something I know more about. I'm not an educator, so let's talk about the medical system. Well, according to a recent survey, 21% of doctors have either been furloughed or they've taken a pay cut as a result of COVID. Nurses and other staff in the private sector have been affected, and it is estimated that right now, 25% of all healthcare professionals are unemployed. For the first time, doctors are experiencing huge drops in income that have caused financial stress previously unheard of in people like doctors. And some doctors are leaving the profession and considering alternative jobs that might shock you a little bit when I tell you about it. Stephanie Eschenbach Morgan is a medical doctor, breast radiologist in North Carolina. She trained for 10 years after college before earning her full salary. And here's what she had to say. She said, being furloughed was awful. Initially, it was going to be 2 weeks, and then it turned into 2 months with no pay. Her husband was a surgeon. He lost a full quarter's salary, and they actually had to ask for a grace period on their credit card and mortgage payments. They couldn't get any stimulus help. Well, you don't normally see doctors in those situations. Shella Faruqi is a radiologist in California, took the time to focus on homeschooling and then started looking at retirement. When one of her work contracts furloughed her, she said at one point in time she was making $30,000 a month. She started saving money at home, teaching the kids, applied for the paycheck protection loan. Her husband, a hospitalist, had his shifts cut too. And so the bottom line is they're just looking at other alternatives now because their entire world's been turned upside down with both incomes affected. Family medicine physician Jonathan Pollock found himself unemployed. His girlfriend manages an outlet of teen fashion retailer Justice. He finished his residency a couple of years ago and actually took a $10 an hour job stocking shelves, and once even delivered a shelving unit from a closing store to a doctor who was fleeing the city for rural New Hampshire to escape. Pollock has a huge debt because of student loans and even considered grocery store work, but ended up taking an 18-month temporary job in Florida, but has decided he's going to do everything he can to not practice. It's just not what he thought it would be. And he said, quote, the culture of medicine, bureaucracy, endless paperwork and charting, and threat of litigation sucks a lot of the joy out of it to the point that I don't see myself doing it forever when imagining myself 5 to 10 years into it. Jen Sung is a former forensic pathologist who got a lot of media attention when she decided to become a professional dog walker and house sitter without a permanent home. She says she knew doctors were restless and unhappy before COVID-19, but it's increased a lot, and found her inbox full of messages from medical students who were dreading the application for residency and employed doctors who were sick of the constant grind. She started having coaching sessions with them by phone and says they don't really call because of COVID. They call because they hate their lives. Michelle Mudge Riley, an MD, a physician in Texas, has been seeing this shift for some time. She recently held a virtual version of her Physicians Helping Physicians conference where doctors hear from their peers who are doing something else successfully, like real estate investing. So anyway, she says there's been an increased interest in other opportunities. Many physicians have had their hours or pay cut, and some have been laid off, some are furloughed, and some just want out of the environment in general. An ear, nose, and throat surgeon from Central California by the name of Dr. Doshi. She left. She returned from a visit to India sick. She said she tested negative for COVID-19 and was waiting to get well enough to go back to her private practice job. Finally, after getting over a relapse of her mystery virus, she emailed in her resignation. Her husband's a family practice doctor, and he gave his notice. He worked in the same building. And they've started doing all kinds of other things like gardening and biking and learning business skills to open their own practice. And I'm going to come back to this later. I want to make some comments about all of this, but just share with you the general idea of what's going on. Both of them felt that the COVID-19 pushed them beyond their comfort zones, but one of them said, in a weird way, it was a good thing because the husband said he felt like he was owned and he really would like to be on his own. Obstetrician Kawanda Roberts took a budding interest in decorating doll houses and started posting on Instagram and got kind of famous, and she's a TV show expert on Sell This House. One doctor says, quote, aside from my passion to learn and have that connection with people, I went into medicine because of the job security I thought existed. I would say my getting furloughed has changed my view of the United States in a dramatic way. I don't feel as confident in the US economy and general way of life as I did a year ago. And I'm taking a number of steps to put myself in a more fluid, adaptable position in case another crisis occurs or if the state of things worsens. So let me say, first of all, for the record, I am upset about anybody who's suffering through this entire time. This is not a good thing. And I don't care what your income level is and what your education level is. Anybody who's suffering is a terrible thing, and I feel bad about it. But for a long time, as we look at medicine, we've been looking at things that were really out of whack. I mean, medical care has been the third leading cause of death in the United States for a very long time. I think that a lot of doctors, and there are many, many exceptions, but we hear about them all the time, who have an arrogant attitude. You know, maybe doctors being vulnerable to some of the same problems that have affected a lot of people is a good thing. Humbling, sometimes when people need to be toppled from their statues. And so, you know, I'd like to see more people go into medicine because they want to help people instead of power and financial security. And again, there are many good doctors who go into medicine for the right reason, but there are a bunch of them who don't, and maybe we'll purge a little bit of that, and that would be good. The inefficiency and general dissatisfaction of consumers with medical care has been an issue. I mean, people have been talking about the need for healthcare reform for as long as I can remember, and there never is any. And the tiny little changes that got made, they really are the equivalent of rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. 2 years, 3 years later, it's worse instead of better. And so nothing has really changed in any meaningful way. So I've said this several times about this COVID thing. I mean, sometimes you have to blow things up in order to put them back together in a different way. Like, it cannot be fixed the way that it is. I kind of feel like that about the medical system. So maybe blowing it up is the right thing to do. So, you know, I mentioned about the doctor, the couple that's going into private practice, like they're leaving the institutions they worked for and going into private practice. I would like to see more of that. And I think we will see more of that. Doctors saying, you know what? I don't want to work for an institution anymore. I'll go out and I'll form a relationship with patients. That's the way medicine used to be. And I'd like to see more of that. And I think that a system comprised of a lot of independent doctors who are independent thinkers, who have an independent relationship with their patients, would be very protective against bad things happening to the medical system, including the things like what we're watching right now. So again, I'm sorry to see that the unemployment rate is so high in healthcare workers. I'm hoping that a lot of talented, ambitious people with the right intentions about helping people will say, you know what, maybe it's just time for me to remake myself in the healthcare field. You know, I don't think that people need to leave the profession as much as they need to reinvent themselves within the healthcare professions. And then we'll wake up one day. I've said this, it sounds hard to believe now, but we'll say, you know what, that god awful period of time we lived through, it was god awful, but some good things came out of it, and a remaking of the medical system may be one of those things. All right, thank you for watching. As usual, pass this on to anybody else who you think would enjoy learning more about this view of COVID. My email address is pampopper@msn.com if anything that I said is interesting to you. And I'll be back to you tomorrow with more news if you're a direct subscriber.